Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 635. 635. December the 15th, 2018, Saturday. Thank you so much for tuning in and good Saturday morning. You know, I don't know if yesterday's video ever uploaded. It failed in the morning. I was home at lunch. I attempted to upload it again. I got home from work and it told me that the video failed because it was already uploaded, which it wasn't. So I don't know what's going on. Hopefully you are seeing this video this morning. It's really important because there's a lot of important information in this video today. So hopefully you are seeing this video. Alrighty. The first thing we're going to talk about here is an interview with Sean Hannity and John Solomon, where John Solomon stated on Hannity that he has discovered a document which exists at the DIA, that's the Defense Intelligence Agency, that exonerates Michael Flynn. Remember, Michael Flynn was head of the DIA. Solomon says that the government knows about this document, so do other people outside the government who've been trying to get it through a FOIA request, which is how he has been trying to get it. But he's being blocked. He says that the DIA is not coming off of the document, despite the FOIA request. Now, apparently what this document does, according to Solomon and other people that he's talked to who have seen the document, including apparently a member of Congress, that this particular document would exonerate Michael Flynn, as if he needs to be exonerated, because we all know what happened with Michael Flynn. He was set up. Michael Flynn, of course, and this goes back again to, in a lot of ways, just like Papadopoulos, this goes back to even before the Donald Trump ever even announced he was running for president. This goes back into 2014. Michael Flynn was, during the Obama years, Michael Flynn was very opposed to quite a few Obama administration policies. He knew all about Obama administration drop shipping supplies to Al-Qaeda in Iraq. He knew about them supporting ISIS in Syria. He knew about the things that were going on in Benghazi. And he disagreed with a lot of Obama administration policies. So the Obama administration, just like they did to Papadopoulos, were out to get Flynn. So then Flynn, they learned that he's going to be taking a trip, a vacation outside the country to, I believe it was Costa Rica. And they used that trip to set Michael Flynn up. They kicked 10 Russians out of the country. I believe they were diplomats, 10 Russian diplomats out of the country just prior to Flynn leaving, knowing good and well that that would trigger a phone call from Kislyak to Flynn. They were waiting for it. And that's exactly what happened. And so they listened in on the call. So they knew exactly what Flynn said to Kislyak in that conversation. Then they called in Flynn, and of course we know how they played that. They didn't. They told him he wouldn't need a lawyer. No big deal. We're just gonna have a chit chat. They didn't tell him it was a formal interview, anything like that. Then they went on to prosecute him under the Logan Act and all the rest. Of course, they then took that phone call that they illegally obtained through illegal surveillance, and then they leaked it. They leaked it. So just a whole series of things that they did that clearly lay out that they framed Michael Flynn. Now, I believe that Flynn is going to be pardoned regardless of what happens. But we're still watching the sentencing hearing to see what comes out of that. And I'll have more on that as we get into that part of the video. In fact, here in just a second. So keep that in mind. Now let's move on to the next thing. So Judge Emmett Sullivan, who is the judge in the sentencing hearing for Michael Flynn, of course we know that yesterday, or Thursday I should say, he ordered the FBI, the Mueller team, to produce the 302 from the Flynn interview by 3 o'clock the following day, which would have been Friday. So Friday rolls around and the Mueller team files the documents, but they do not file the 302 in question. They do file a 302, but it's a 302 written by Peter's been stroking us, who is in a sense talking about the interview, and this was 6 months after the interview happened. But we know from just things we've heard from interviews that have been done with other people, and I believe that would be McCabe and the other agent who was in the room with Peter's been stroking us, this Joe Pientka, and it's been alleged at this point by individuals who've conducted those interviews that that interview with Flynn was conducted by Peter's been stroking us, asking the questions, and the other agent, Joe Pientka, writing down, taking notes. Now, what's supposed to happen is that within 5 days of interviewing a witness, the two agents are supposed to get together and look at the notes that were taken during the interview, along with some other factors, that they look at, how the person responded, their eye movement, eye contact, body movements, whatever, to determine if the person may have been lying. And we had learned already that both Pientka and Strzok did not believe that Flynn was lying. But somehow we get this 302, this other 302 that Peter's been stroking us comes up with 6 months after, and it really doesn't discuss the interview itself. It's more about Peter's been stroking us opinion of what he's thinking, which is different than what we're told he was thinking 6 months earlier, right after the interview. So they have not produced a 302, the one from 5 days after the interview, which is what is required. There's also some additional filings after you interview a witness, and we don't know if those documents were given to the judge or not. And the judge hasn't made any statements yet. So I think he may want more information. Maybe he's going to spend the weekend looking at it. I don't know. But you get the feeling that there's something very fishy going on here, which we've all known about. I think the judge knows that there's something fishy going on here. He's dealt with these very same issues before. And so he's ruled on cases before where 302s have been falsified, changed, manipulated, lost, or what have you. So we'll continue to watch this, but it looks like at this point there's an issue with the original 302. Where is it? Because they didn't produce it for the judge. And that's a problem. That's a problem. And I imagine the judge is going to look at this and go, okay, so you gave me this, 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 and this, but what I really wanted was this, the 302, that was supposed to be conducted and done 1 week after, along with a couple other documents. Where's that stuff? So I think that we can expect to hear more about this next week from the judge, and we'll see exactly what happens here. Well, the FBI is opening a new investigation into Papadopoulos. That's right, Papadopoulos. And this is regarding Russian collusion. That's right. Apparently, there's an individual who says he knows that Papadopoulos was working with Russians on a business deal after the election. The problem is that I see is it's not a crime to work with Russians in the world of business. There's no law against working with Russians. You can do business with Russians. Lots of people do. Just ask Bill and Hillary Clinton. Ask the Podestas. They do a lot of business with the Russians. The only thing I can think of here is that maybe they'll go for another lying to the FBI. Maybe if this guy can prove that Papadopoulos did have some sort of business dealings with Russians after the 2016 election, and he told Uncle Bob that he didn't, then maybe they got him on another perjury trap. Who knows? But this is more than likely just harassment, because Papadopoulos is out there basically telling his story and saying that he believes he was framed, he was set up. And he's telling the truth, I believe. I believe what he says. And so they want to, obviously, harass Papadopoulos and try to shut him up. What should have happened already, and probably won't happen now, is he came out and said, hey, I'd love to testify openly in front of Congress and tell my story. Carter Page said he was willing to testify openly in front of Congress and tell his story, as was Caputo and Roger Stone. 4 guys who were approached by these so-called informants, all willing to publicly tell their story. For some reason, none of these committees decided it would be a good idea to have any of these guys come in and publicly testify. For whatever reason. They've already all testified privately, behind closed doors. But the problem is the narrative. This would have done great things to change the narrative, or at least ways to get people to ask questions. But they didn't take advantage of it. And it won't happen now. What a shame. Now, many of you have seen this clip of the dishonorable former director of the Federal Bureau of I'm With Her, J. Edgar Comey. Now, if you saw this interview with Nicole Wallace, you may have seen the part of this where Comey literally admits setting up Flynn. Wallace asked J. Edgar Comey how it all came about that the interview to interview Flynn. And he looks at her and says, well, because I told them to. I sent them in. I called McCabe and said, yeah, go over there and interview Flynn. Comey says, I sent them. At which point he in the audience laughs. Ha ha, that's very funny. Huh. Then he says, you know, I probably wouldn't have gotten away with it in a more organized administration. He says normally you have to work with the White House counsel to interview senior administration officials. But I thought it's early enough. It was 4 days into the administration. It's early enough. Let's just send a couple guys over. And we know what happened after that. And as I said earlier, the Obama administration, including Comey, had already heard Flynn's call with Kislyak. They knew exactly what conversation had occurred because they conducted the surveillance. Then they unmasked it. Then they selectively leaked it. The Trump administration was in its first week. 4 days is how long Flynn had been in his position there in the White House. 4 days when they sent Strzok and Pientka over there to set him up. And there he is admitting to it. Why? Because he's so arrogant and feels like he's so above the law that nothing's going to happen. And I don't blame him. Look at what they did. Look at all the evidence that shows us what they did. He openly admits that he leaked these classified notes to his friend for the purpose of getting a special counsel. He lied 3 times that we know of, 4 times that we know of in the congressional hearings. You can just go down a very long list of things that Comey did. I mean, he should be indicted on probably 12, 13, 15 counts. But he's so arrogant and so believes that the deep state has such a system that you can't penetrate it. You can't beat it. That's what they're all relying on. They totally believe in the corrupt system they've set up to be impenetrable. And so far, they've been proven correct. And that's why he's so arrogant and smug about admitting to his crimes. And until anybody's held accountable for those crimes, it's only going to get worse. But you all know that. Well, as you know, the Rotten Reverend Clinton was ordered by a judge to answer a couple of questions about her email server. This is in regards to a lawsuit from Judicial Watch. And I read those questions to you about a week ago. Well, today was the day for the Rotten Reverend Clinton, Friday was the day for the Rotten Reverend Clinton to submit the answers about her server. And, of course, as soon as she did, Judicial Watch made that document public. I'll spare you the legalese and all that. I'll just go through basically very quickly how she answered the questions about why she set up the email server, who set up the email server, whose decision it was, and all these other questions that we went through. So here's basically the answers that the Rotten Reverend Clinton gave. By the way, just to preface this, as you would already probably suspect, she lied. Now, keep in mind how the Rotten Reverend Clinton operates. Whenever she's running for public office, she is the smartest person in the room. the most informed person, the most experienced person, pure genius, the rotten reverend. But when she finds herself with her tit in a ringer in a criminal conspiracy, she immediately becomes dumber than a bar of soap. She does it every time. I've been watching her do this for decades. Decades. One moment she's the smartest person in the room, but when she gets caught in a criminal trap that she created, she all of a sudden becomes completely stupid. Remember the old when she was asked about wiping the server, and she's like, "Oh, you mean with a cloth?" It's classic Hillary. She goes into dumb, stupid mode as soon as she's caught. "I'm too stupid to know." Just like when she was interviewed about the classified information, seeing the C, and she decided, "Oh, well, I thought it was just like numbering, like A, B, C, D, E, F, G." That right there should have got her indicted. That right there. Nobody can be that stupid if you've been First Lady, Secretary of State, and a Senator. Nobody can possibly be that stupid. But she does it because she's that arrogant, and she knows that she's going to get a free pass. She knows it. She's not the least bit worried. She just laughs right in your face. So she responded to the questions about her email server by saying that she set up the server for convenience. She says that she had no role in the process of setting up the server. She says that she knows nothing about the equipment, how it was created, or who else had accounts on the system. How's that possible? She says that the system was set up for her husband, and it had been recently upgraded. She says she does not know what equipment was used, how it was created, who decided the system needed to be upgraded. She says she believes one of her husband's aides, Justin Cooper, set it up. He testified in hearings, remember? Of course, Judicial Watch, like everyone else, is saying bullshit, and they say that they will have more questions. And I assume the judge is looking at this and going, bullshit. But that's what you get from the rotten Reverend Clinton. Because what are you going to do? Indict her? And who's going to do that? Who's going to enforce that? She knows a lot of things about the deep state. She's already said if she goes down, she's taking everybody with her. They'll protect Hillary until they can't protect her anymore. And then they'll likely arrange something else for her. When she becomes a liability to the organization, she will end up like Johnny Roselli and all the rest. Judicial Watch has obtained new documents showing that Obama administration officials provided classified documents about Russiagate to senators just hours before Trump's inauguration. The senators who received this classified information regarding Trump-Russia collusion were Mark Warner, Ben Cardin, and Bob Corker. So on the morning of the inauguration, they were working at a feverish pitch to find out how they could skirt the laws on moving classified information. And there's a whole backstory to it that you can read about the efforts they had to go to do this, to get the documents, these classified documents about Trump-Russia, into the hands of these three turncoats on the very morning, which means the Obama administration, as we know, were working at a feverish pitch after Trump won the election, all the way up to just hours before his inauguration, to spread the information that would be used to carry out the palace coup. Obama administration with Barack Hussein Obama, the Right Reverend Clinton, the tip of the spear. The person who was the point person to make all this happen was Victoria F. the EU Nuland. Victoria F. the EU Nuland. She was also the person who the dossier was passed through from Christopher Steele to Jonathan Weiner to Nuland. Then it found its way to John Kerry. It found its way back into the FBI. She's up to her eyeballs in this. She's a hardcore Trump-hating neo-con who's married to a hardcore Trump-hating neo-con. She's a very nasty person. It's got to be Yats. It's got to be Yats. Fuck the EU. It's going to be Yats. He's our guy. Trump has named Nick Mulvaney to be his chief of staff. Now, some people are saying, well, it's his temporary chief of staff. No, I don't think so. I think it's his interim chief of staff until the end of the year when John Kelly goes, and then Mulvaney will become his regular chief of staff. So it's not like he's only going to be there for a couple weeks and he's going. No, because people have been getting that confused. I've seen it on news reports today. No, when he says interim, he means that John Kelly is going to be leaving at the end of the year. And so Mulvaney will be the interim between now and the end of the year because John Kelly's leaving, and then he will become Trump's chief of staff. Now, I was hoping for more of an outsider, but Mulvaney, you could do a lot worse. Because in a lot of ways, he's a fighter like Trump. He seems, as far as I can tell, to be a loyal supporter of Trump. He seems pretty loyal to me. I'm not aware of him doing anything behind Trump's back. He'll be a hell of a lot better than John Kelly. And he's got the skills. There's no question about that. He doesn't back down. He's a lot like Trump in a way. He's a fighter. He's very smart. And not my pick. Wouldn't have been the guy I would have picked. But you could do a hell of a lot worse than Mulvaney. So I guess I'm okay with that. I just hope that he pushes hard to expose the deep state crimes. And on that count, I don't know. We'll just have to watch and see. But that appears to be the verdict at this point. Nick Mulvaney. Well, it appears now that Macron is now at 18%. 18%. That's extraordinary. I'm not aware of any leader in modern history of any country that approval ratings dropped to 18% and they were not forced out. That's extraordinary. I don't know how much longer he can hold out. Maybe it's an issue of he may be getting support from the EU. He may be getting support from Merkel. Who knows? But there's some reason that they continue to leave him there. Maybe they haven't figured out exactly how to get rid of him. Maybe they haven't figured out who would replace him. They were talking about a no confidence vote or having a vote a week ago in his own party. The yellow vests are not going away. The protests are not going away. They're only expanding and they're carrying on. I expect probably this weekend to be more. Be interesting to see how long he can hang on, just like Theresa May. Theresa May is hanging on by a thread, as is Macron. Merkel has already started walking toward the exit door. It's happening all over Europe. Extraordinary time to be alive. It's going to be a tumultuous year or two in the EU as the whole thing, in my opinion, begins to really unravel. And things are going to get mighty interesting. And it's like I've said in other videos, when you look at world history and you look at the rise and fall of empires and you look at how things, when governments collapse, how things usually happen, as I've said before, these things happen very slowly at first, then very quickly. Very slowly at first, and then very quickly. There's always a long buildup. And then at some point, it's like a breaking point you hit. And then everything happens very quickly. And that's usually when the chaos and the violence and everything else ensues. It's usually not orderly The collapse of governments is typically not orderly. That's why they came up with elections, to have a peaceful, orderly way of transitioning power. But sometimes it doesn't work out that way. And especially when the democratic system is broken, has been abused, manipulated, as is the case in all of Europe with the EU. The countries that belong to the EU are no longer sovereign nations. They are essentially satellite states of the technocrats at the EU, who are not democratically elected. So it's going to be a very tumultuous, wild year in Europe. And I just hope that good change comes, and that it comes with as little loss of life, property, and everything else is possible. But in this particular case, and the way these things happen, unfortunately there is going to be a lot of bad things going down. The only thing you can hope for is on the other side of it, there's something good that comes from it. Now, a lot of people have been talking about this really crazy, bizarre thing that happened at the Bush funeral. I haven't talked about it yet. I know a lot of people have talked about it, particularly people in the comments section on other videos. And I'm talking about the individuals who at the Bush wedding, or at the Bush funeral, who got these envelopes or notes or letters, whatever you want to call them, whatever they were. Typically what we saw was people getting envelopes, but there was a couple people that just got notes. And it was the reactions of the individuals who got these notes or envelopes. We know that the Right Reverend Clinton got the envelope because we saw it fall out, and then we saw her response when she looked at it, which seemed to be that the Right Reverend Clinton, the envelope falls out, she picks it up, she looks at it, she's very stoic, very straight-faced, not much of an expression on her face, but she obviously didn't want to share it with anyone, especially Bill. She very quickly put it back in the envelope and then seemed to, sit back in her chair and then look back up towards something dead center ahead of her. Then we see that Mike Pence's wife gets one of these. Didn't really catch the expression on their faces. Then we see that Biden and his wife get this note or letter. It was actually the envelope, just like Hillary got. I heard that Al Gore also did, but he was sitting in a position where the camera couldn't capture his response. But probably the most interesting response was the response when the note, it wasn't in an envelope, it was just in a note form, was passed to George W. Bush by the Secret Service agent. There were two Secret Service agents. We assume they were Secret Service agents, and we assume that they were the Secret Service agents for George Herbert Walker Bush, Bush 41, sitting right behind Bush, George Bush, and Laura Bush. That's where they were seated. You can see at some point the one Secret Service agent behind Bush leans forward and gives him this piece of paper, note, whatever you want to call it. Apparently Bush takes a quick look at it, and the look on his face is obviously troubled, angry. You can see him clench his jaw and tighten his mouth. He seems to have gone instantly fuming, but he's trying to maintain, I guess, with all the emotions going through his mind, because the casket, which we assume his father is in, is going right by him at that very moment. And then he gets this note. Then he reaches over and he gives it to Laura Bush. She looks at it, and she also gets quite the interesting look on her face that we've never seen before. Then she shows it to Jeb, who literally freaks out. So this is a very strange thing. There was something obviously very serious, very troubling, very strange about these notes or envelopes that these individuals received, the ones we know about. So I guess a lot of people are commenting on what they think all this was. And of course, I've been sitting back for the last 3 or 4 days just waiting to see if anybody finds out. and it doesn't appear anyone has conclusively found out. And I'm not so sure that all these notes were even the same thing. It may have been. It's very likely it could have been, or who the note may have been from. Who knows? But the first question I guess I would have is, of the people who received these notes or envelopes, was the exact same thing written on each note or envelope? Or did each of them get a different message? Did they get the same message or a different message? Whatever it was something very short and sweet, or something you could very easily look at just at a glance for a couple seconds and get the point. We saw this with W. Bush, how quickly he was able to glance at it and figure it out. Laura kind of had it for a little longer. Jeb Bush only had to look at it for about 2 seconds. The Right Reverend Clinton, about 2 or 3 seconds. So whatever it was, it only took these people 2 or 3 seconds to look at it and very quickly determine there was something there that was clearly troubling, maybe frightening, horrifying, scary, serious, crazy. Who knows? But I think we can all agree that whatever it wasn't something good. No one cracked a smile on their face. No one laughed. No one gave a response that was anything other than pretty troubled looking, pretty alarmed. I mean, Jeb Bush looked like he almost lost his breath. He went weak in the knees. He looked horrified at whatever it was. Laura Bush got a look on her face I'd never seen before. George Bush also clenching his jaw. Biden and his wife, they had a very interesting reaction. Biden's face his face went red. His wife and Biden, they both, Joe Biden, they both looked pretty rattled. And then, just as they were going through this process, the Right Reverend Clinton had turned around and she was facing them. So I don't know if she was talking to them or if they discussed what was in there or whatever. But very, very unusual, very strange situation it went down. So the truth is, I have no idea what was on those notes or envelopes. I can only agree with most other people that whatever it was, something pretty alarming. But I thought it might be okay to take a few guesses at exactly what may have been in those envelopes or on those notes. So I'm now going to give you my top 10 ideas on what I think may have been in those envelopes or in those notes. My top 10. Number 10, you're next. Number 9, the autopsy photo of JFK's brain. What's left of it? Number 8, you've been served. Number 7, a picture of a noose. Number 6, you were adopted. Number 5, a note saying, after the funeral, the pizza party is canceled. Or the after funeral party, pizza party is canceled. The note said, the after funeral pizza party is canceled. Botched that one. Number 4, I got that son of a bitch Kennedy and his brother too. Number 3, you've been indicted. Number 2, a photo of Michelle Obama's wiener. And number 1, my thoughts on what possibly was in that envelope or in that note. My number 1 possibility was that it was a summons from Skull and Bones to attend the nomination ceremony to fill the recent vacancy. A summons from Skull and Bones to attend the nomination ceremony to fill the recent vacancy. That's my number 1 thought of what may have been on that note. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'll be back tomorrow with more TowerGate. You guys have a good night. See ya. Bye.